When you face things such as moth's illness, then you start to look at life in different terms, don't you? You see loss and love and grief, and it reflects against the life you've lived, the life you hope to live, and what ties all of that together. And I think that's what the Wild Silence became. Really, I wanted to explore how moth's health had improved as we'd walked. But then as I started to write it, it sort of became something else. I finally knew what had driven me to suggest that we should walk across cliffs and beaches, through woods and valleys, sleeping wild, living wild. I could feel it now, cold, gritty, dark. I could feel it pushed beneath my fingernails and dusty in my hair. It was the thing I'd fooled myself into thinking I could live without, the one part of me that my family had understood better than I did. I'd always known what the voice in my head was saying. It was the land, the earth, the deep humming background to my very being. I ran to it when all else fell apart. I needed the safety of being one with the land. The core of me needed that sense of complete belonging, as fundamentally as the air I breathed. Without it, I would never be whole. It was always the land. I knew that our relationship had always been based around our time spent in nature, rock climbing in the Peak District or spending nights in a plastic bag on a hillside in Scotland. But as we'd walked the coast path, we came to understand our connection in a far deeper way, that it wasn't just a connection, it was something more than that. It was intrinsically part of who we are. But in knowing that, as I was started to write, I think I came to realise that actually we're all strongly connected to the natural world, whether we acknowledge that or even see it or not. Because we are all part of the natural world. I think if the pandemic that we're all going through has taught us anything, it's that we are part of that natural environment and are subject to its changes as the birds out there in the hedgerow. Here in the southwest, I've really found a part of the country that I love, and that I'm really finding a really comforting, healing sort of place to be. But then when we went to Iceland, it was a real sense of a very, very much bigger picture, because there's something so raw, so elemental, so much like you're there at the birth of the earth. It's almost as if you're at the very beginning of life. You're in the ash flows and the lava flows of those volcanic areas. And it's like life is beginning, earth is beginning. And then it's constantly beginning because it's wiping itself out and starting again. And that sense of early evolution, that sense of the natural world actually being completely capable of existing without us at all, of reinventing, of beginning again. And that place, I think, really allowed that sense of connection to the natural world to become something much bigger. It made it feel as if it wasn't about a connection. It was about being as much a part of the ash on the ground that I walked on as the northern lights that were sending those fingers of incredible light down to the earth. That huge connection of the whole thing, that sense of even when I did lose Moth, that he would be as much a part of that lava flow as he was of that magnetised air, and in a sense that none of it would be lost, that nothing would be lost, it would all still remain. I think if I'm going to write about something, I'm going to write about the intense little nitty-gritty bits of it. And in doing that, you've got to have the humour, you've got to have the human interaction with each other, you've got to have that interaction with the world around you. So you need to pee, so you need to eat, so who is that woman and why is she doing that? And wow, that is the most spectacular landscape I've ever seen. I try to write how it is to live as part of the natural world. I watched Moth on the opposite bank, boots on, laces tied, beckoning me to him. For a moment, the rush of water seemed to slow, and I thought I saw a young man push the long hair from his face and wait to catch me as he called me into his world. A fleeting moment of connection. The earth, our lives entwined, dependent, stripped back to an earlier raw state, unfettered, reformed, renewed, and I could hear a voice for the first time in this alien land, roaring in deep-throated tones from mountainsides streaked with green growth painted across the black. New life growing from the destruction. Fresh, clean, the same but new. Here in the icy tumult of a world beginning was our connection to it all. A chance, a hope, a breath. I stepped into the raging water and picked my way across to a man who was surviving the upheaval in his body, a man returning to a raw state of being, neurons refiring, new connections forming, a primeval simplicity being refound. A pale yellow light, I can't do it now because I'm just going to laugh.
That was fine.
If it doesn't